So the person fears Hashem, that contributes to his being careful and guarding the 365 loisas. This is what Hashem says not to do.
Prohibited.
The negative mitzvahs. So over here, you don't see so much that this is getting involved and the feeling is investing in the garment of action, because that is very clear cut when you're dealing with a positive mitzvah. I'm doing the mitzvah, I'm putting on the tefillin, which the putting on tefillin is an action, which is again part of the garment, and the garment is connecting to Hashem, but there's a love which is invested in that garment, in the garment of action. There's a love, so the love is also connecting to Hashem. In this case, the whole notion of fear, and what it leads to, is the person not to do what Hashem says, tells him not to do. So he's not supposed. In other words, the whole idea what Yira contributes to over here is that the person has the strength and simply the fear of Hashem, that he's going to hold himself back not to do what Hashem says not to do, which is the 365 mitzvahs leisas, negative mitzvahs, which we're prohibited to engage with. And so, but in the same token, even though it's not something that he's doing, but his not doing is also mitzvah. So you can say it's a kind of action. In other words, his not engaging is in the world of action, but in a way of no. So what is invested in that no and that not doing? What's invested in not doing is the yira, is the fear. So the fear, ultimately, the fear itself is what? Missing. So doesn't it start Vahayira on the top? Doesn't it say Vahayira? It says fear. Vahayira. It says Vahayira, right?
Fear is the root.
So.
But mine has both sides, and that one has only one side.
It doesn't matter. In the meantime, that's what we're learning. So we're going to get to it. Okay. We're going to give you the right paper eventually as well. It's made differently, but it's the same paper we're learning. So the fear is also, again, part of the neshama. If you remember that the neshama itself has all the 7 attributes. One of the attributes is fear. The first one was love, which we dealt with last week, and then the fear is the second. So this feeling of fear is invested in the person holding himself back from doing a mitzvah. So again, it's not active. In other words, it's not that he's doing something. It's more passive, or a determination not to do, or he's holding himself back not to do. This is what a leises is all about. Because it's in the world of action, even though it's not, so it is an expression of the garment not doing, and what's invested in that? Part of the neshama, which is the fear. So the yira is the shadish, is the source to 365 leises. Why is yira the source? Because the reason why a person does not do aveda, because he fears to rebel in the King of all kings, which is Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He. That's the simple reason why he doesn't do aveda, because Hashem says not to do it. He fears to rebel in the King. A person fears to rebel in a king of flesh and blood. And here you're dealing with the King of all kings, so he has this fear. And that's why he prevents himself from doing a leises. So the midah, the character fear, which again, as we look in the 3rd chapter, is part of the neshama, is invested in the not doing the leises, and the not doing these 365 leises, which Hashem says not to do. So it's clear. So that means that the feeling, the neshama itself, engages as well in the action. And when it comes to mitzvahs leises, the love, and comes to mitzvahs say the love, and comes to leises, the fear. Then the Alter Rebbe goes on. He says, when you're dealing with fear, you should know that there is different levels of fear. There's multiple levels of fear, for that matter, in Torah, and especially in Kabbalah, and Chassidus. But here the Alter Rebbe deals with 2 dimensions of fear, 2 levels. One deeper, more pnimistic, the deeper level, and the fear than we said before. That the first one is, it's also a level of fear that the person is so conscious about about Hashem, He's conscious about Hashem as the king of all kings, to the extent, because he's conscious about Hashem, so he fears to rebel in this great king. It's definitely a level of fear, and if a person really feels the presence of Hashem and he holds himself back from doing an Aveda because he fears Hashem, it's definitely something special, and that is a true Yirah Shamayim. The true Yirah Shamayim, the heaven, the fear of the heaven means of the one who is Shamayim, who's in Shamayim, which is at Eibishter, right? He's everywhere really. Malay Kolad is Kavoda, but he has Yirah Shamayim, he has fear of Hashem. The Alter Rebbe says when you're dealing with fear, there's something in a deeper level of fear. A Yirah Pnimis Mizu, a deeper level of fear. Shemizbeishish Migdulasei. He's ashamed of the greatness of Hashem. Lamreis in a kveidei, to rebel in the eyes of Hashem's honor. V'lasas Rabbeinav, and to do evil in His eyes. Kol te'avas Hashem hashasonei. All this is which is disgusted and abhorred by Hashem, which is the klipas zitrachra, which anything is associated with tumah, impurity, which according to Kabbalah and Chassidus is called klipa and sitrachra for the reasons which we gave a number of times. Klipa is just a shell. It's not you have an orange, for example. There's the orange itself. This is what counts. This is what it's all about. This is what contributes to your satisfaction. You don't take it for the peel. The peel just covers over. You throw it away and you eat the orange. Similarly, the kedusha, holiness, is what it's all about. Tumah, forces of impurity, are called klipa, which means they're just the shell. And sitra achra also is an expression of tumah, but it's the other side, because I think we spoke about it over here, that you don't even dignify it with a term. Kedusha, there's holiness, and sitra achra is the other side. Like you say, somebody, which team are you on? And this, and then what team are you on? The other team. In other words, it's the deriding expression. You don't even give it any dignity. And tumah truly doesn't have any dignity. There's a lot of energy, but it doesn't have any dignity. We shouldn't give it any dignity. Like you want to think about darkness in contrast to light. Light is a mitzius, it's something. Darkness is not. It's just the absence of light. It's dark, right? It's not something which, even though we've mentioned as well in the past, it says Yetzer Or Vorei Choshech. Hashem creates darkness, which seems to connote that darkness is an entity. But when you look at it practically, or you look at it in our eyes, light is a mitzvah. It's something. It's an entity. Darkness is not an entity. You take away the light, so it's dark. You take away kedusha, so it's tumah. It stays devoid of kedusha, so it remains tumah. So that's why that's a term is klipas and sitra. Very briefly, what's called klip and sitra, which these are the forces and the energy of tumah. I'll explain in a moment why is this a deeper level of fear, but just to read these few words, it nurtures from man below, and it holds on to man below when the person chas v'shalom transgresses the 365 mitzvahs leisesa. 365 negative mitzvahs. So why is this a deeper fear? So you're going to tell somebody, for example, this is a very important meeting, there's important people in this place, you have a big stain on your shirt from this food you ate. Don't walk into the room, because the people are there are too important for you to walk in. So the person feels that he doesn't want to be intimidated, he doesn't want to intimidate anybody else. And if he's not understanding, he could be in a level he doesn't understand what's wrong with walking in to an important place with a stained garment, a stained shirt. He might feel that it's not maybe, but he doesn't see the severity of it. He's told that this place is such important people, and they probably would not tolerate someone with a stained shirt. Okay, so you obey, you listen, and you feel that this is the right thing to do. You don't want to rebel at these important people. That's one level. Another level or another person that he realizes on his own that around these people it doesn't make sense to come in with a non-clean shirt, with a non-clean garment, because he feels how disgusting it is that this doesn't go together to sit in the same table with these important people. So the first person is just obeying, he's being a good boy, even though to some degree he realized these are important people. Or there's a king in the room, he's accepting people. And the king in the room, you don't stand in front of the king with a non-clean shirt. It's more the obedience over here. He understands this is a great person, and he's told it doesn't make sense to stand with something unclean, so he puts it, he fits it. He realizes there's something wrong, but basically he's told that this is wrong, and hence he will not do so. More of a healthier approach is that he feels, I'm going to walk into the king's room with a non-clean garment. It's something which he's disgusted with the notion of something like that. If the king is sitting there, even with a clean garment, I have a problem to go with the king, because you go walk into the chamber of a king, you tremble, you at a certain point you want to leave because this is so overwhelming. You're in the same domain, you're in the same room as the king's chamber and the king is talking to you and he's accepting you. How much more so that comes with an unclean garment? You don't find any you don't find any justification to do so, and there's nothing within you. You don't need to be told, hello, can I check your garment? No one has to stop you by the door and say, do you fit the criteria of coming into this room? You don't need to, because you feel yourself there's something very unacceptable, and it's something doesn't click to walk into the room of this important person, or this king, when you have a stained shirt straight, flat, right in front of you. So you don't have to be told, you feel it, something's wrong. This is the same idea. These are two different levels of fear. The first one is Kiyare Limred. There's a king, and the person fears to rebel in this king, and he's not a king of flesh and blood. He's the king of all kings. He's a Kodesh Baruch Hu. He's the Holy One, blessed be He. So he's such a great king. I fear to rebel, but I'm not. You're not dealing, and therefore I won't do the mitzvahs leises. A deeper level of yira, a deeper level of fear in this case is that he understands that every aveira or chas v'shalom one does, he connects himself to the world of impurity. When Hashem says not to do something, it's not like Yirimini Manimo, he's stopped by that. Truly, he could have stopped by something else, stopped by that. There's nothing intrinsically wrong, or intrinsically the action is not intrinsically connected to the world of impurity. One could maybe think one way of looking at Aveda, but we know it's not the case. When Hashem says stay away from that, Hashem is clearly telling you, and as we're going to see later, and Alter Rebbe elaborates on this idea, Hashem is clearly telling you that is connected and anchored and tied down to a whole world of impurity. You'll engage with that, you will chas v'shalom impurify yourself. You will think something that Hashem says not to think, and it's inappropriate to think. You are engaging, you're connecting your machshava, you're taking your thought and connecting it to something which is impure. And impure is worse than a physical stain. This is a world of impurity which is the antithesis of Kedusha. You're going to speak something with Teres is not to speak. It's not just Hashem said stop by Lashon Hara, don't speak. No. There's something intrinsic with Lashon Hara, with the world of Tumah and Klip and Sitra Achra. You're staining your speech, you're staining your neshama when you speak Lashon Hara. And similarly with any action, when Hashem says do not eat this piece of meat. It's not something external what this piece of meat looks like. The piece of meat nurtures and receives its energy from the world of Klippa and Sitra Achra. When I take it and I consume it, I right away brought myself, I plunged into a level of Tumah and Sitra Achra. I'm all about spiritual stain at that time. Can I stand in front of the eyes of Hashem? Can I stand in front of Hashem with all my stains, within all these stains? The person feels disgusted and he feels shamed to stand in front of Hashem with a stain, and in this case, to stain himself in the presence of Hashem, which Hashem is everywhere, Malakol Haaretz Kavodai. So it's not that he has to be told, he stopped by the door and he says, don't rebel in Hashem. That's the first. In other words, the first level of Yira is, he stopped by the door. You cannot stain yourself when you're coming into the king. He fears to rebel in the Melech Malcham Malcham HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The second idea is something so much deeper. He's not going to rebel because he knows that every Aveira Chas v'Shalom he will do, he's connecting himself, he's bringing his neshama, he's staining his neshama with the worst type of stain which is ever possible, which is again taking his pure neshama and which is ultimately a part of Hashem, and staining it with forces and energies of Klippa and Sitracha, which is again Tuma. So how can I do that? Hashem is right here. And He's not in that. Hashem is not in that room. I could say I finish up and then I'll go into the go clean myself up and go. Hashem malak al aretz kavodei. Hashem is everywhere. So I'm not doing the aveda because Hashem is right here. I'm going to just allow myself to be stained. That type of fear is a much more profound type of fear, because you're not dealing with someone to say yes and yes or no. He's overtaken by the perception of what sin is all about. And therefore he fears to sin because he's standing in the presence of Hashem. He's not allowed him to dirty himself. That's a total different level. So again, not to lose focus. Here the Alter Rebbe adds this new notion, this new idea of, or rather the second, the more pnimistic and more inner dimension of fear. But what Alter Rebbe is basically getting back to keep things again, to see what the context which we're dealing with over here, as it comes in continuation with Alter Rebbe began in Perek Dalet, saying that when the person engages in a mitzvah or stays away from the Aveda, it's not only his garments are doing all that, but the whole neshama is introduced into that. If he learns Torah with his garment of thought, the neshama, which is the Chabad, the intellect, is invested. Hence, the intellect is connected to the Torah. When he does a mitzvah, it's not only his speech or action of doing the mitzvah, but it's the dimension of the neshama, which is the midah, the attributes of the neshama. Last week we learned about Ava, the love is invested in the mitzvah saseh. This week we learned about the fear is invested in the mitzvah leisa. So the reason why he stays away from an Aveda is because Hashem says no. Because, the reason why he stays away from Aveda because he has fear from Hashem. So the fear ultimately connects itself to that merit of staying away from Aveda. Because the fear is the reason why he ultimately stays away from the Aveda. So what do we see over here? That not only the garments connect to Torah, but the neshama itself, because it's invested in the three garments, also connect to Torah mitzvahs. So here the Alter Rebbe is going to go on, and he's going to explain us that is there something special? Is there indeed something special of the neshama? Again, we already spoke about this. A few times. Why the Alter Rebbe is emphasizing the importance of the neshama investing into its own garments in order to connect to Torah mitzvahs. But again, here we're holding actually at the place where the Alter Rebbe emphasizes or elaborates on this idea. So the Alter Rebbe is going to explain us now that there is indeed something very special from the neshama, that it actually engages and connects to Torah mitzvahs via its own garment. Why? Isn't the neshama also holy? What does the neshama need to connect itself to the holiness of Torah mitzvahs in order to so to say, to be in a state of holiness? So when we say there's a great virtue for the neshama that it invests in its garments, because through its garments it can connect to Torah mitzvahs, the neshama itself is holy on its own. So here the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, no, there's something very special about Torah mitzvahs where the neshama on its own does not have. So here, we're going to go on, we're going to just try to pass another paper over here. I want to see how we can do over here. So we could just pass around the papers. So the Rebbe says, so he goes, these three garments, even though they're called garments to the nefesh ruach neshama, to the soul, im kolzeh, nonetheless, gova v'godla malosam le'ein kates v'sof al malos nefesh ruach neshama atzman. Nonetheless, the quality of the Torah mitzvahs, or the quality of the three garments, because it has only via the three garments can the person connect to Torah mitzvahs, this virtue is greater. And if you see the expression greater, le'ein kates means infinitely greater over the neshama itself, which is again divided into nefesh ruach and neshama. Infinitely greater. So someone's going to say, well, I have a neshama, I'm all up there. Neshama is a part of Hashem, and not only that, my neshama is not resting. It's not put to sleep. It's all in full mode. And again, what does it mean full mode? When the neshama understands godliness and it feels for God and has ava, love and fear. What do I need to do the mitzvahs? What do I need to put on tefillin? Seems like a simple act. What do I need to do the mezuzah? What do I need? What's important of leisasa? Why the whole world of Torah mitzvahs? And I can't get there on my own, the neshama. As we said a few times, because the experience of the neshama in Perek Gimel in the 3rd chapter is similar to the experience of the neshama in Gan Eden. I need to invest myself in these garments. I need to put on the garments of thought, speech, and action in order to engage with the Torah mitzvahs via these thought, speech, and action. So the neshama itself, so like, what do I need it for? What is so special? Comes out to them and says, the virtue of the Torah mitzvahs over the neshama is not just a little holier, a lot holier. He says it's infinitely greater. The garments, because the garments have the ability to connect the Torah mitzvahs with the neshama on its own cannot, the garments are infinitely greater than the neshama itself. Now, naturally, garments not on their own. Garments which connect to Torah mitzvahs are infinitely greater than the Torah mitzvahs on its own, than the neshama on its own. The neshama on its own means prior than investing in its garments through which it connects to Torah mitzvahs. Why? Like it says in Zayir, that Hashem and His Torah are one. Meaning, because Hashem and His Torah are one, so when you do Torah mitzvahs, you're connected to Hashem. You don't do Torah mitzvahs, the neshama is also holy, it's godly, but the godliness is not so apparent and it's not so manifest like the way it is when it connects to Torah. Torah is called Torah Or. Torah is lichtigkeit. Torah is where godliness is revealed, godliness is manifest. Anon nafshik savis Yehavis, Hashem began the Torah saying, Anechi Hashem lekecha, I am Hashem your God. The Gemara says that Hashem took His whole neshama, His whole essence, and placed it into Torah. So when I learn Torah, I do a mitzvah, I connect myself to God Himself in the most revealed and apparent and manifest manner. So the neshama prior to that is holy and it's even a part of God, but it's not in a revealed manner. It's not an apparent manner. It's not overtly connected. So from a state of non-overtly, a neshama which is not overtly connected to Hashem, to a state of open connected to Hashem, or connection to Hashem, the difference is indeed infinite. Because through this action you're connected to infinity, while prior to this action you were not connected to the infinity. So when the neshama invests in its own garments, and via its own garments it connects to the infinity. Why is it connected to infinity? Why when I learn a Mishnah, or I do put on a pair of tefillin, or do any other mitzvah, I shake the lulav and ask, why am I connected to infinity? Because there's a raisa v'kutsha brichu kol echad. Torah and Hashem are truly one. So if they're truly one, when I engage in the mitzvah, I'm connecting myself to Hashem. So if I'm connecting myself to Hashem, so precisely the garments bring me to a place where I myself, meaning I the neshama, cannot go to. So when you look at garments in a physical sense, you could somewhat say so, but no one's going to say there's a priority to garments over the person. The good thing is that it brings out the very good part of the person. Also, a person could interact with the outside when he has garments. It could bring him things which he cannot do, and again, especially in a world which human convention dictates that a person interacts with garments. So when he doesn't have garments, certainly, again, we could relate it to some degree the way it is physically as well. Certainly a person could be healthy, and he could live, and he could eat, and he could sustain his body and so on, but in the same token, he cannot go out into a public meeting if he doesn't have his garments. He cannot interact socially without his garments. So the garments seem to say something so external, but only through his garments could he do something which ultimately could contribute to his whole to his whole his lifestyle from A to Z. And you're going to say, why? Because I had a nice suit, therefore I can go out. there is something special in those garments, and that's the way you were able to go out and join this meeting and sign this contract and make money and contribute to your well-being. When if you didn't have those garments, you cannot go out there. So the garments on the surface are inferior to men, 100%. But you see that garments could ultimately contribute to men. So this is the way it is physically. And it doesn't seem to have such profundity. In other words, the garment, you don't see these special. You see, technically, because the world is set up, that people interact only because when they're invested in their garments. So you see how it can contribute. But in this case, it's black and white. The neshama on its own cannot shake a lulav and esrog. And what is shaking lulav and esrog? Shaking lulav and esrog is literally touching the divine. Hashem says, I put myself in. This is my limbs. The limb. Remember, we said last week that the term in the Zohar that I'm is limbs of Hashem. So when I shake the lulav and esrog, I'm literally hugging and connecting myself to the divine. The neshama itself, as much as it has a pleasurable experience about the divine and with the divine, but nonetheless it's not touching the divine. And what allows the person to touch the divine is his actions. So there's something very special, even though action is just a lavush, just a garment. There's something very special in this garment that through it I can touch the divine. And similarly, when I learned Torah that my mind prior to that, it thought about godliness, like that's experienced in the 3rd chapter. But it didn't think about the Mishnah. Thinking about godliness is very lofty and very pleasurable, but where did Hashem place himself? He placed himself in the Mishnah. And ultimately, he placed himself in Zohar and Kabbalah, which deals with godliness also. In the Tanya is exactly the same as the Mishnah, because this is already written and it became part of Torah's emes. Before someone learns it as a part of Torah, he thinks about godliness, goes on a mountaintop, thinks about godliness. It's wonderful. But he did not touching the divine, because the divine is in Torah, not anywhere else. So because what gives me the ability to learn Torah is my thought, which is again, it's external, it's just a garment, that because it's my thought that gives me the that structure in order to understand the Mishnah, so it's through my thought that my neshama, as holy and lofty as it was, it didn't have the ability to connect to the divine, to the Torah, which is ultimately Hashem is Torah one. So he says, and that's why it's Ein Kates. That's why it's infinitely greater on the neshama itself. And we say Pirush, the Eiraisa, the Torah. What is the Torah? The wisdom and the will of Hashem. When we say Torah, it means as it reads. That when you say Torah, as it reads, the Torah, if you look in the Torah, what do you have in Torah? You have the wisdom of Hashem, right? Gemara, even the pasuk in Torah, there's a beginning, there's an end, there's structure, there's a wisdom which is carried through the Torah. Torah itself says, Ki chochmaschem v'binaschem. It is your wisdom and your knowledge. So you see Torah is chochmah, and again, Torah is rotzein. Ratza means desire. What do you have across the entire Torah? Across the entire Torah, you have the Ratzain of Hashem. You have Hashem's desire, Hashem's will. Putting on tefillin is what Hashem wants. Shaking the lulav and esrog is what Hashem wants. Doing any mitzvah, even a midrabanan, this is what we do because Hashem wants it. So when we say Torah is part of Hashem, very simple. Chochmaseh, Hashem's wisdom, which is in the Torah. Ritzaynei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And v'HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvei v'atzmei, and the Eibishter, with his honor and his essence. In other words, Hashem himself is kul echad, is all one. So so when you open a Mishnah and you learn the Mishnah, you have wisdom there because it's Torah. There's a beginning, there's an end, there's an understanding of a concept. And what else do you have? You learned in the Mishnah what you learned. You learned what Hashem wants you to do. The Mishnah says 2 people are holding a talus. One says I found it. One says I found it. So comes the Mishnah and dictates and says the halacha is so and so. Where does it come from, this halacha? This is what Hashem decided. Hashem dictated in His Torah. This is Hashem's desire. So when you learn a Mishnah, your wisdom connects with Hashem's wisdom. through thought. Remember, thought is the garment, and Ratzain is where you find out what Hashem wants. And moreover, when you implement what Hashem wants, the Mishnah says that this is the Torah says you have to take the lulav and esrog. And the Mishnah with Torah, the oral Torah, explain you exactly what the lulav and esrog looks like, and then you actually shake the lulav and esrog. You engaged in Ritzaynei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem's desire. So what does this mean? What does it mean? The Torah and the Ratzin of Hashem, meaning the desire of Hashem, is Kol Echad, is all one. So when the Neshama engages, and again in the mitzvah or learns Torah, it reaches a level that on its own it could have never reached. Now someone, we're going to read another few lines over here to get to the stop. Ki hu yayideya v'hu hamada v'chulu k'meshukos oleh l'shem Rambam, which is on really the following page. But let's just see it, just let you understand it, because there's a quote which we had in the past as well. So, what does it mean, ki hu yayideya? So then someone's going to say, is that really Hashem Himself? Is that really Hashem Himself? Does it work by us? Take man, for example. Am I my intellect, or I have intellect? I'm not intellect. Excuse me. I'm gifted with intellect. Or I am not. Chas v'shalom. There's certain people who are, for that matter, certain people on the surface, they're not gifted with intellect. That's why they expire. There's the person and his intellect. And even something deeper, which is my desire, my drive, things which I'm driven to. That's not me, who I am. There's me and what I want. And if you take away what I want, doesn't mean I expire. There is my essence, what I want. There's my essence and my wisdom. So apparently, what are you telling me? Hashem and His Torah are one. And when you say what it means His Torah, His wisdom, His desire, and Hashem are one. By me, it doesn't. Man, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. Comes the Rambam and says, you're right. By man, it doesn't work like that. By Hashem, it indeed does. That by Hashem, Him and His desire and His Ratzin and His Chachma rather and His wisdom are truly one. So when I open a Mishnah and I engage and said, I didn't connect to God, I connect to Hashem's wisdom. So if you're dealing with someone else related a concept, so you're really connected to His wisdom, not necessarily you're connected to Him. When you connect to somebody, you do something what the person wants, it could be the connection of what he wants and himself are not necessarily so tied and bounded together that you could say that you satisfy his desire. When it comes to Hashem, the case is not so. Because Hashem, the Rambam points out, Hu Hamada, V'hu Hayodea, V'hu Hadavar Yedu. In other words, when it comes to Hashem, His knowledge, and what He knows is all truly one. So when I open a mission and I find out what Hashem's wisdom is, and when I connect myself and I learn it, I engage with that Mishnah, I connect, I understand what the Mishnah says, I'm not only connecting to Hashem's Chachma, to Hashem's wisdom, I'm connecting to Hashem Himself. And I want to say, we elaborated on that Rambam very much enough that we don't have to repeat this whole idea. That's what I'm saying in a brief. We elaborated. You could see the first, the second, and third classes when we dealt with the first class in the second chapter. You could find it and hear it again, because we gave a number of examples based on what the Rambam is trying to say. It's an incredible statement of the Rambam. But here, very brief. One should make no mistake and say, well, okay, I'm getting pretty close to Hashem because I'm connected to Hashem's wisdom, and I shake the lulav and esrog, I'm connected to Hashem's desire, but that's not Hashem. Why would I think? Because that's why I look at it by myself. I'm not my wisdom, so when someone connects to my wisdom, he connects to my wisdom. He didn't connect to my essence, to my core. Someone does what I want, so there's my want. He connects himself to something I want. The truth of the matter is, there's things which I want more than other. If someone just connects to something which is external desire, really didn't connect. I don't feel so much the connection to me personally. If he connects himself to something which is a deeper desire within me, certainly he gets closer to me, but it's still not the person himself. When it comes to Hashem, though, Hashem His wisdom and His desires are all one. So when I learn a mission, it's not only I'm learning the wisdom of Hashem, I'm engaging to Hashem Echad, that's Hashem, it's the essence of Hashem. When I shake the lulav and esrog, it's not I'm connecting myself to only the Ratzon Hashem, no. Hashem and Ratzon are one. I'm connecting myself to the essence of Hashem. So again, in culmination, this is the virtue of the neshama. But even though on its own, when experiences like Perek Gimel, the third Perek experience, which is lofty, pleasurable, special, unique, similar, the closest you can get to the description of the Neshama in Gan Eden, it's beautiful, but it doesn't connect to the essence of Hashem. Torah, where did Hashem place His essence? In the Torah itself. And how can I connect myself to the Torah? Only through my thought, speech, and action, where I ultimately seem to be inferior, because they're garments, and garments are always inferior in comparison to the person himself. Yet only via my garments, that's the way I can connect to Hashem. So there's the great virtue, and he says, Le'en Kates means infinitely greater than Neshama itself, the fact that it connects itself to the essence of Hashem via the garments. Have a good week.